welcome to ldsbookreviews.com. My name is Ryan Daly, lover of books, and we seem to be going through a number of sacred scriptures from other denominations and sects. And today we're going to go through the Koran. This is an English translation by A.J. and Arberry that I read. I'm going to give it 2 stars, but I hesitate to do that because it does have a great amount of value in today. And so it's not a commentary so much upon the book itself as a commentary on where it fits in the LDS community. Okay. Now, the Quran is something that is a little different, a little unique. It is the foundation of Islam, and it was given to Muhammad and then was compiled much at a later date, a couple centuries after that. Now, I'm going to say a few things about this. When you read it, if you ever decide to read it, a few things you're going to notice. One, you're going to quickly, well, I'll say first of all, if you read it in the context, in the English translation, in the context that Allah or God is God, right? In the context that that's the Hebraic translation for God. So if you can, in your mind, just translate that to Lord or God, and you can go through it in that context, you're going to have a much deeper appreciation for the text. You're also going to find and appreciate why it's a sacred text. The tonality of it, there are some tidbits and stories that are fantastic. They teach phenomenal lessons. You also begin to have an appreciation that it's not a warmongering faith. There's a lot of misinterpretation as to what Islam believes. And I do think that by reading this, there's a deeper appreciation. But with that being said, you can also see where, if you're reading it with the Spirit, you can see truths and tidbits that come in. You can see powerful faith and why it's brought forth. But you can also see where after couple hundred years of transmissions before they were written, how things got lost, or how concepts could have been put in that weren't necessarily in there to begin with. Now, I don't know if what Muhammad was given was truth, and that through translation and through verbal passing down, it got diluted. But there are points where there's just beautiful, beautiful dialogue in relation to the Lord. The irony of it is at the same time, it seems to be a book that really focuses in and of itself in containing all the truth, but yet weighs very heavily on stories from the Old Testament and a few from the New Testament, almost anticipating that the reader has this undergirding concept. They talk about the covenant with Abraham, talks about Jesus Christ, stories of Jesus Christ. At times it talks about how Christ was a virgin birth and was a sign, but yet minimizes the Messiah concept and places him just as a bringer of truth. But it alludes to stories in the Old Testament and New Testament that it almost assumes the reader knows, and yet talks about it in and of itself as if you don't need anything else. So it's really an interesting read. There's a number of versions that are on audible.com you can listen to if it fancies you in that concept. But as for the LDS community, it's 2 stars, not because it's not valuable and not because it doesn't contain a great amount of I would say spirituality and sacred text, but it's not going to teach you anything that you don't already know. There's a couple of ideas that they carry in polygamy that I think are probably interesting in the LDS community. There's a couple of really moving poetic places. There's a couple of interesting narratives in relation to Abraham, a couple stories in relation to Noah that can kind of help put some things in perspective, but nothing that isn't already set out in like the legends of the Jews or stories that we hear from other ancillary sources. So I will say that it gave me a greater respect for Islam. It gave me a much greater respect of understanding them and their faith. And it didn't give me more respect for the Lord and understanding the development and kind of the need to be faithful to his word. I'm inspired that there are people in the world that memorize this from cover to cover, and kind of am ashamed as a member of the church that I don't put that kind of faith in my own scriptures. So with that being said, I recommend it if it's something that you're really interested in reading. But as a member of the church, again, you're not going to walk out with anything unique or completely powerful over and above what's in our sacred scripture. But you'll definitely gain a better understanding and appreciation for the book. You'll see why it's considered sacred scripture. Just this tonality is spot on, and for a faith. And I leave these things with you. I hope that you enjoyed this. We'll keep it kind of short for the Quran. Again, 2 stars for the LDS community. If you enjoyed this and you want a complete write-up at ldsbookreviews.com. I know that there's a lot more that can be said about this book, but we'll just keep it there. Thanks.